Happy New Year, knitting peeps! Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Bo Peep Knits. My name is Lisa and I'm a beginner knitter based in Canada. I started this channel because I wanted to document my journey as a new knitter on YouTube. And so we are currently at 1,000 subscribers, which is honestly so surreal to me. That is so many people, more people than I could have ever imagined watching my videos. I honestly thought when I started this channel that it would just be me, my boyfriend, and my mom watching. And so thank you so much for following along on my journey. Thank you for your support. It truly means a lot to me and it has made my first year of knitting so much better. Before we start, if you have not subscribed yet, please make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on all the fun videos that I have planned for this year. So in 2025, I knitted up 23 items, which is quite impressive for a beginner knitter. I didn't realize that I knitted that many things until I tallied everything up for this video. So out of the 23 items, 10 items were knits that I made for myself, and 13 were gift knits, so items that I knitted for other people as gifts. And the total number of garments that I made was 8, which is honestly not that much, but we're gonna work on that this year. And out of the 8 garments that I made, 3 were summer knits, and the rest were accessories. And so since most of the items that I knitted in 2025 were gift knits, I don't have them anymore. And so I can only show you the items that I knitted for myself. And so we'll get started on that. The first item that I ever knitted for myself was the Sophie scarf by Petite Knits. And if you were knitting around that time, early 2025, you know that the Sophie scarf went viral everywhere on TikTok, on Instagram. It was probably the most popular pattern at that time. And so I couldn't help myself, but I had to cast on a Sophie scarf for myself. And my Sophie scarf was knitted using the Luxe Merino Tweed yarn from Luxe and Threads, which is a brand that is carried at Michael's. And this color is the color Cream Tweed. And I barely used a skein of that yarn. And so I had so much yarn left over that I was able to knit up a hipster hat for my friend Jess, which I've talked about in one of my previous videos. The composition of the yarn is 50% superwash merino wool, 40% acrylic, and 10% tweed. And this is the yarn close up. It is super lovely, super soft, and incredibly warm. The total project cost for this project, I would say, would be about $8 Canadian, just because I didn't use up a huge amount of yarn, and the rest would be the cost of the pattern. And so I would say that as a beginner, the Sophie scarf is a quite easy project to knit up. The only difficult part would be keeping track of your increase rows. But other than that, it's knitted in garter stitch, so it's relatively easy. In terms of usage and practicality, I don't find myself reaching for the Sophie scarf all that much, unfortunately. It is a very beautiful scarf, but I do live in Canada, and so it is very cold here in the winter, and even during the fall. And so I don't really find myself using my Sophie scarf all that much, because when it is cold out, I tend to wear a turtleneck, or when I'm just wearing a regular sweater, I would just use a bigger scarf, and I don't really reach for my Sophie scarf too much. And so I could think of other ways to wear my Sophie scarf so that I could use it a lot more. Maybe I could wear it as like a mini bonnet, but because the scarf is quite small, it could really only cover my ears. I guess I could wear my Sophie scarf as an accessory scarf, so not for warmth, but maybe to match with maybe a similar toned sweater, or maybe I could kind of play around with the colors. So maybe I could wear this scarf to match with a black sweater, or like a brown toned kind of sweater. So we'll see how I can try to style my Sophie scarf for 2026. but last year I didn't get too much wear out of this scarf, unfortunately. The second item that I knitted was the Sophie hood by Petite Knits, and I enjoyed knitting the Sophie scarf so much that I wanted to knit up the hood version of the pattern. I knitted up my Sophie hood using the Hobbii Tweed Delight in the color Pink Confetti, which is a perfect name for this yarn. The composition of this Tweed Delight yarn is 85% wool, 10% acrylic, and 5% viscose. I love my Sophie hood. I get so much wear out of this, and I think it is the perfect pattern if you want something to cover your head, but also something to wrap around your neck. The Sophie hood is absolutely perfect for that, and it's quite unique as well. Not many people are sporting this sort of hood scarf kind of hybrid, at least in Canada. So I am usually the only person who is out and about wearing a Sophie hood. So I feel very, unique whenever I step out and I'm wearing my Sophie hood. The project cost for my Sophie hood was $25.40 Canadian, which I think is such a great price for a well-made and super warm and super cute winter accessory. Yeah, I've gotten so much wear out of this, and I really enjoyed knitting the Sophie hood. I will most likely knit another Sophie hood in the future, probably with another yarn, maybe in a solid color. But yeah, Sophie hood, 100% recommend for other beginner knitters out there. The next item that I knitted is my very first sweater, which is the Step by Step sweater by Florence Miller. And I knitted my Step by Step sweater using the Hobbii Friends wool in the color Sapphire. I used 8 skeins of this yarn, and the composition of the yarn is 100% wool. I would say that the Step by Step sweater is an amazing pattern if you are looking to knit up your very first sweater. The pattern is accompanied by a video tutorial with step-by-step instructions on how to knit certain parts of the pattern, which is so incredibly helpful when you're still trying to figure out these new techniques. So the Step-by-Step sweater is very sentimental to me because it is my very first sweater. I really like the color. I have nothing like this in my closet. And so I really like the sweater pattern and the sweater project because of that. The only complaint that I have about this project has nothing to do with the pattern itself. It actually has something to do with the yarn that I used. And so I love Hobbii. Anybody who watches my channel knows that I love Hobbii. But unfortunately, the Friends wool, I think, pills very, very easily. And so I'm going to try to come a little bit closer so maybe you can kind of see how the sweater is looking. But it just looks very pilled. And even though this is my first garment that I finished, I wouldn't say that I wear this sweater more than all of my other garments, just because I have other sweaters and other clothes in my closet that I wear as well. There is just so much pilling with this sweater compared to all of my other garments that I will show you in a bit. But it just looks very worn and very old, and I haven't worn it all that much. So I think the yarn is the culprit for all of this pilling, which makes the sweater look a lot more old and worn than it actually is, and it's a little bit disappointing, I do have to say. Like, if it weren't for the pilling, the sweater would still be absolutely beautiful, and I feel like because it pills so easily, I kind of refrain from wearing it now. I do depill my sweaters, but I find that I have to depill this particular sweater so much more because it's just so pill prone, I would say. So I am not very pleased about that factor of this sweater, but because of, the sentimental value and because this is my very first sweater, I still really, really love it. but I can't wear it all that much. Despite all of that though, the project cost of this sweater is actually the cheapest out of all of my garments, I would say. So the project cost for my step-by-step sweater is $36.96 Canadian, which is very impressive. I don't think you can get a sweater that is 100% wool and hand knit and super soft and super warm for that price anymore. So I am very proud of my first sweater. But it is a little bit sad that I really can't wear it all that much anymore because I don't want it to pill even more and then have it be completely unwearable. So after knitting my very first sweater, I decided to knit my very first cardigan, which is the Maggie cardigan by Petite Knits. And I knitted my Maggie cardigan using the Laine du Nord Eco Baby in the color pale yellow, and I held it with the Hobbii Friends Kid Silk in the color pastel yellow. I used 5 skeins of each of the yarns. I would say that as a beginner, the Maggie cardigan was quite a difficult pattern to kind of jump into. I wish I waited a little bit longer until I felt a little bit more confident with my knitting skills to knit up my first cardigan. But I really wanted a butter yellow cardigan for the spring, and so I took the chance and I casted on the Maggie cardigan. Even though it was a difficult pattern, I managed to make it through with the help of other knitters on TikTok and on YouTube and Instagram, so I am very thankful for all the knitters out there who helped me with my Maggie cardigan. I couldn't have done it without you. But I learned so much with the Maggie cardigan and it turned out super beautiful. Since completing my Maggie cardigan, I haven't worn it all too much though, just because I did finish my Maggie cardigan at kind of an awkward time. I think I finished it like mid to late June, so it was already getting quite hot and I couldn't really wear it during the summer. I did wear it though. But I didn't get as much wear out of the cardigan as I would have liked. And this isn't really a wintry kind of color, so I kind of have to wait until March again to bring this cardigan out. I really enjoyed knitting the Maggie cardigan. There were definitely struggles. If you saw my project vlog for the Maggie cardigan, you definitely know I was going through it. But overall, thinking back at it now, I think that I learned so much knitting this cardigan, and it was quite a transformative project for me to take on so early in my knitting career. The project cost for my Maggie cardigan ended up being $97.70 Canadian, which I think is pricey, but not too much, just because it is made of 100% natural fibers and you can't really find good quality, warm, soft knitwear in fast fashion anymore. And I don't know, I feel like it is totally worth it. My next garment is my very first summer knit, which is the Alice top by Petite Knits. And I knitted this up using the Sadness Garn Tickline in the color white. I used 5 skeins of this yarn, and the composition of the yarn is 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen. While working with this yarn, I didn't really like the texture, and the size of it was a little too thick for my liking. Just because there isn't any wool in this yarn, and so there was literally no bounce with this yarn. So it was a little bit difficult to work up, but I really love the drape and just the feel of this yarn after I finished the project and blocked it. But I will say I don't really like the pattern. I had to make quite a few adjustments to the pattern, and I just don't think, even after all of the modifications, I just don't like the Alice top on me. I just don't think that it looks very flattering on my body. So what I might actually end up doing is I might actually frog this Alice top and use the yarn to knit up something else. Just because I don't want this Alice top to just kind of stay in my closet and not be worn at all. But I just haven't really been reaching for it all that much. I think I wore it one time after knitting my Alice top, unfortunately. And so because I didn't really get any wear out of my Alice top, I will most likely frog this project so that I can reuse the yarn for another project. However, for $39.70 Canadian, I do think that it is a really good price for a summer top, but again, I'm not getting any use out of this, so this $39.75 Canadian will probably be better used as a different summer top. Because I was unhappy with my very first summer knits, I decided to knit up something else, which is the Sabai top by Suzanne Mueller. And I knitted my Sabai top using the Katia Concept Cotton Cashmere yarn in the color Off-White. And I used 6 skeins of the yarn. It was a sport weight, but I held a double to meet gauge. The composition of the yarn is 90% cotton and 10% cashmere, and I found that with that 10% cashmere in the composition of the yarn, it allowed the yarn to be much more drapey and easier to work with when I was knitting up the Sabai top. I really like my Sabai top. I didn't have any issues with the pattern, I don't think. It was quite an enjoyable knit, and because I really liked my Sabai top, I found that I ended up reaching for it so much over the summer. So my project cost was $65.94, so it is a little bit on the pricier side, but despite that, I still think that it is worth it just because I really like my Sabai top. I wore it so much over the summer, and I know that I will get so much wear out of it this summer and all of the summers in the future. I just really like the boat neck kind of silhouette on summer tops, and so I can really see myself reaching for it a lot this summer. And so I'll just continue to get a lot of wear out of this Sabai top. And so the project cost, a little bit on the pricier side, but really, really worth it. So let's talk about the Monday sweater by Petite Knit. So this sweater took me so long to knit up. I think it's just because it's just a regular raglan stockinette type of sweater. And so there wasn't really anything interesting in the pattern. Nothing wrong with the pattern though. Like, it is very well written. It is Petite Knit after all. But just the pattern itself is just a little bit boring. So it took me a long time to finish my Monday sweater, but I will say that it is one of my favorite sweaters. I really like the roominess of this sweater, the silhouette. It's like a little bit oversized, actually the perfect amount of oversized. By the way, I knitted my Monday sweater using the Cascade 220 in the color Peony, and I used 5 hanks of that yarn to knit my Monday sweater. Such a lovely color. Even though it took me a long time to knit up, I have gotten quite a lot of wear out of this sweater. It's such a lovely color. The yarn is super soft, and it doesn't really pill all that much. Like, you can kind of see just a little bit of pilling under the sleeve here, but other than that, not really any pilling whatsoever. It still looks like I, just finished my sweater, which is very, very impressive. The project cost of my Monday sweater ended up being $66.85 Canadian, which is pricey, but not as pricey as another sweater that I'm going to be talking about. I still think that it is a really good deal for a sweater that is 100% wool. And it's super soft, super warm, beautiful color. It's hand knit, like, come on. I do think that the Monday sweater is a really beautiful sweater, despite it kind of being boring looking. And so I can definitely see myself knitting another Monday sweater, but probably in a more neutral color. Next up is probably the most popular pattern that I've knitted on this channel, and that is the Petite Knit Olga sweater. I knitted my Olga using the Sadness Garn Double Sunday in the colors bubblegum pink and red. I used 5 skeins of each of the colors. And the composition of double Sunday is 100% merino wool. That's not superwash. I love my Olga sweater. I think I really enjoyed knitting my Olga sweater the most. I feel like it went relatively smoothly, despite it being my very first striped sweater, my very first sweater working with 2 different colors. It went quite well. I didn't really have any major issues, except for the back yoke part. Yeah, the back yoke kind of confused me a little bit, but I ended up doing it correctly. So if you watch my project vlog, you'll know. But despite that little hiccup, everything else in the pattern went relatively well, and it knitted up very quickly just because it is a drop shoulder, so the sleeves knitted up quickly. So I don't know, I had a really great time knitting up my Olga sweater, and it turned out absolutely beautiful. I normally don't go for bold colors like this, especially the red, but even though it is quite bold, it doesn't look too out there, at least on me, or at least I think so. And so I have gotten a lot of wear out of my Olga sweater. I find that it is kind of the perfect occasion sweater. Like I can wear this on Christmas, even though it's not a typical Christmas type of sweater. The colors kind of remind me of Christmas, but also I can wear this on Valentine's Day, but I can also wear it on Chinese New Year. So like, I don't know, it's just like the perfect occasion sweater, at least for me. I can definitely see myself knitting up another Olga sweater. Now, the project cost of my Olga sweater did end up being quite expensive. It is a lot more than all of the other garments that I've knitted. So the project cost for my Olga sweater is $120 Canadian, which is quite pricey. Now, compared to like Aritzia like prices, obviously it's not as much, but it is still an expensive sweater. It is 100% merino wool though, but of course, $120 Canadian is still expensive for a sweater, so I do fully acknowledge that. However, I do think that I will get so much wear out of my Olga sweater, and I can definitely see the Sadness Garden Double Sunday really lasting a long time. It really hasn't pilled all that much. Like maybe, again, there's like a little bit of pilling underneath the sleeve here, but honestly, compared to the Hobbii Friends wool, like this yarn basically hasn't pilled at all. Like it looks brand new. I really enjoyed knitting my Olga sweater. I definitely want to knit up another Olga sweater, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to knit up other projects first, and then I'll return to the Olga. The next item that I knitted is actually my very first test knit, and another one of my favorites. It is the Brie Boatneck by Midsummer Knits, and I was so lucky to be selected as one of the test knitters for this lovely summer top. If you can't tell, I have a thing for boat neck summer tops, and so when I saw Emma's perfect Brie boat neck pattern, I just knew that I had to apply to test knit the pattern. So I used the Noro Silk Garden yarn in the color 491 Yatomi, which is a beautiful gradient yarn, which is the first time that I've ever used a gradient yarn for one of my knits. I wasn't a huge fan of the Noro Silk Garden yarn, which if you saw my project vlog for the Brie Boatneck, you saw that I was probably like the biggest hater for this yarn. But despite my yarn issues with the Noro Silk Garden, I do really love this Brie Boatneck. I haven't gotten too much wear out of it yet, just because it is quite a spring and summery kind of top, just because of the yarn colors that I picked for my Brie Boatneck. But once the warmer weather comes around, I will definitely wear my Brie Boatneck so much more. The project cost for my Brie Boatneck was just for the yarn, just because I test knitted the pattern and so the pattern was free. But the yarn cost was $79.96 Canadian, which is a little bit on the pricey side for a summer top, but I do think that it is so beautiful, so it's gonna be worth it. The last item that I knitted in 2025 was the Oslo hat by Petite Knits. If you watched my Vlogmas videos, you probably saw me knit this up. I really like the yarn that I use for my Oslo hat, which is the Sadness Garn Poppy in the color Tutti Frutti. I used 2 skeins of the Poppy yarn. I really like Poppy. I can definitely see myself using Poppy again for winter accessories, but also for garments. So I don't have any issues with the yarn. It's just the pattern. And I think maybe this is completely my fault, but I made a modification to shorten the brim of the hat. And I feel like it just kind of made the hat look very oversized and slouchy on my head. So that potentially may be my fault. But despite it not fitting my head in the way that I intended it to, I still wear the hat. It keeps me warm. It's still pretty cute. So I have gone somewhere out of this Oslo hat after finishing it a couple of weeks ago. The project cost of my Oslo hat ended up being $32 Canadian, which is a good price for a hat that is super warm, super soft, and super cute. I love Tutti Frutti. Like, I just love these speckled, different colors of variation of yarn. I don't know if I'm describing it right, but you guys get the vibe. I just really like this kind of type of yarn. And so I'm really happy with the yarn. The hat, we're learning to love. So let's quickly run through all of the hits and misses of the things that I knitted in 2025. So, favorite garment, it has to be my Olga sweater, hands down. Least favorite garment, I will have to say, is my step-by-step sweater. And it's not like the pattern, it's just because of the yarn, unfortunately. My favorite accessory will definitely be the Sophie hood. I've just gotten so much wear out of that thing. It's super cute. I always get compliments, so yeah, that's my favorite accessory. Least favorite accessory might have to be not the Oslo hat, surprisingly enough. It's probably the Jew headband that I knitted up for my friend Wilson. I didn't mention it in this video just because I don't have it with me, but if you saw my gift knits of 2025 video, you saw the famous Jew headband that I knitted for my friend Wilson. I'm sorry, Wilson. My favorite yarn of 2025 has to be Sadness Garn Double Sunday. It just works up so beautifully. There's no knots. It's just such a smooth and beautiful knitting experience. And then the item that is knitted up after just drapes so beautifully. It's just so soft. Sadness Garn Double Sunday, my favorite yarn of 2025. My least favorite yarn has to be a tie between the Happy Sheep wool and Drops Air. Now, I didn't use either of these yarns for projects just because I didn't even make it that far. Like for Happy Sheep wool, that was the yarn that I was originally going to use to knit up my step-by-step sweater, but the yarn just kept ripping and it was just such a terrible knitting experience for me that I just ended up destashing that yarn and I didn't end up using it at all. Now for Drops Air, I'm forgetting what I was going to knit up using that yarn, but I bought a sweater's quantity and I ended up returning it because upon closer inspection of the yarn, I found that it was just freaking me out. I talked about it in one of my videos, but it's just like the way that the yarn was kind of blown. The yarn fibers were blown into this like polyamide tube, with like these tiny holes, and it just kind of freaked me out too much. Sadness Garn Poppy is kind of like that, but it's just not as freaky to me. I don't know, but Drops Air, I don't know, just in that specific colorway, the holes were just way too prominent for me to not notice. And so, I don't know, it just made me too uncomfortable that I had to return the yarn, and I didn't end up knitting anything in Drops Air. So I'm completely blanking on what I intended for that yarn to be used for. So that's it for everything that I knitted in 2025. Thank you so much for spending my very first year of knitting with me. It truly means a lot. I had so much fun sharing my experiences with you all. I hope that you enjoyed watching. I have so many fun videos planned for this year, so please make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss out, truly, I promise you. My next video that I have planned, I was thinking of making a Make 9 knitting plans video. So if you're interested in that, please let me know in the comments. And yeah, until we see each other next, please stay warm, please stay healthy, and happy knitting.